Let's talk about one of the great puzzles of human nature, resilience. What is it, really, that allows some people to get hit by life over and over again, and not just survive, but actually bounce back?
You think about someone like Klaus Schmidt. He was a journalist who lost 2 children to illness and a third in an accident. His career was completely upended multiple times, and yet he stayed curious, full of life, always looking forward. This isn't just about being tough. It's a quality that has fascinated researchers for decades, and honestly, it feels more crucial now than ever.
And here's where things get really interesting, because what we think we know about resilience, it's almost completely wrong. We have this idea that resilient people are just these relentless optimists who power through everything with a smile. But their research points to something way more profound. True resilience, it turns out, begins with a cool, unblinking, staunch acceptance of reality.
So let's really unpack this resilience puzzle. It's become a huge buzzword in the business world. Leaders I've talked to will tell you it matters more than education, more than experience, even more than training. One CEO I spoke with put it so bluntly. He said a person's level of resilience will flat out determine who succeeds and who fails. But here's the good news. It seems like it's a skill you can learn, not just something you're born with. And when you sift through decades of research, a really clear pattern starts to emerge. Resilient people and, get this, resilient organizations, from Holocaust survivors to Fortune 500 companies, they consistently share 3 core characteristics. So the first pillar is probably the most counterintuitive one. It's not about positive thinking. It's about having a sober, down-to-earth, and sometimes brutally honest view of your situation.
This quote from Admiral Jim Stockdale, who was a prisoner of war for 8 years in Vietnam, is just absolutely chilling, and it perfectly illustrates this point. Someone asked him who didn't make it out of the camps, and his answer wasn't the pessimists or the realists. He said it was the optimists.
He explained it this way. They were the ones who kept saying, "Oh, we'll be out by Christmas." And then Christmas would come and go. Then it was, "We'll be out by Easter." Then the 4th of July. And eventually, he said, they just died of broken hearts. Stockdale, on the other hand, accepted the brutal reality of his situation without ever losing faith that he would eventually get out. And that's the paradox.
And this isn't just a lesson for individuals. Facing down reality is a core trait of the most resilient organizations. It allows them to actually train themselves to survive before a crisis ever hits.
Just look at Morgan Stanley's preparation for September 11th. After the first World Trade Center bombing back in '93, they faced the grim reality that they were a target, so they prepared. They ran these relentless military-style evacuation drills. They even built 3 separate backup recovery sites. Their COO actually admitted that on September 10th, it all seemed like an incredible extravagance. But on September 12th, well, it looked like genius. That hard-nosed realism saved nearly 2,700 lives.
Okay, the second pillar of resilience is this drive to find meaning, especially in terrible times. While some people see themselves as victims and ask, why me? Resilient people manage to devise a story, a construct that gives their suffering a purpose.
And maybe the most powerful example of this comes from the psychiatrist and Auschwitz survivor, Viktor Frankl. In the midst of just unimaginable suffering, he developed a concept that he called meaning therapy.
Frankl realized that to survive, he needed a purpose. So he would imagine himself after the war standing in a lecture hall, teaching students about the psychology of the concentration camp. This mental bridge to a meaningful future, well, it made his present suffering manageable. It gave him a reason to endure.
Now, for companies, this search for meaning is almost always anchored in a strong, unchanging system of values. These values, they act like a kind of scaffolding in times of trouble.
You see this in so many resilient companies. Johnson & Johnson has its famous credo. UPS has what it calls its noble purpose, which helped it rally after a really bitter strike. What's crucial to understand here, though, is that resilience itself is ethically neutral. Philip Morris, the tobacco company, is incredibly resilient. It's built on the strongly held, though pretty controversial, value of adult choice. The strength of the belief is what matters for resilience, not its content.
All right, this brings us to the third and final pillar, this remarkable talent for improvisation, for making do with whatever you have at hand.
There's a great word for this. The French anthropologist Claude Lévi-Strauss called it bricolage. It's basically about tinkering, right? Seeing possibilities where other people just see junk. Think of concentration camp inmates who would pocket a piece of string, just knowing that later on it might be used to fix a shoe, a repair that could literally mean the difference between life and death.
But hold on, here's a fascinating twist. The organizational psychologist Carl Wick points out that when we're under extreme pressure, we don't become more creative. We actually regress to our most practiced, habituated behaviors. So, how does improvisation even fit in? Well, UPS gives us the answer. That is a company of incredible precision. They have rules for everything, from how drivers hold their keys to how they close doors. But, and this is the key, those strict rules are exactly what enable improvisation. By automating all the basics, they free up their employees' mental energy to creatively solve the one or two big problems that come up that day, like a bridge being washed out or a massive snowstorm. It's focused ingenuity.
So when you put these three pillars together, you start to move from just understanding what resilience is to actually being able to build it.
So here's the crucial takeaway. It's not just one thing, but this three-part harmony. You need that staunch acceptance of reality, which is grounded by an unwavering search for meaning, and that then gives you the freedom to improvise. Any one or two of these might help you survive for a bit, but genuine resilience requires all three working together. Ultimately, resilience isn't just a personality trait that you're born with. It's a reflex. It's a way of facing and understanding the world that becomes deeply etched into your mind and your soul through practice. It's about training yourself to survive before the fact. And that leaves us with a final question. It's not about if you're resilient, but about how you build that muscle. Seeing the world clearly, finding your purpose within it, and learning to cleverly improvise along the way. So the question is, how will you train your reflex?